You know, I've spent over 60 years on this strange, beautiful planet, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: silence is not empty. It's full of truth, full of presence, full of life itself. I often tell people, especially those who are entering the later chapters of life, that silence is not something to be afraid of. It's something to listen to. But most of us were never taught how. We live in a world that worships noise. The television hums even when no one's watching. The phone buzzes just to remind us we exist. The radio in the car fills the space between one errand and the next. And deep down, we've mistaken noise for connection. Because silence feels like a mirror. It reflects everything we've tried to outrun: the loneliness, the regrets, the unanswered questions that still echo somewhere inside. When people begin to awaken, spiritually, emotionally, deeply, something shifts. They stop running from that mirror. They sit with it. And in that stillness, something sacred begins to whisper. I remember working with a woman in her late 50s, a successful business coach, always surrounded by people, always talking. She once told me, "Alan, I can't stand silence. It feels like the room is closing in." So I asked her to do something simple. Sit in her garden each morning. No phone, no music, just 5 minutes of quiet. A week later, she came back, tears in her eyes. She said, "The silence isn't empty anymore. It feels alive." And I smiled, because that's when you know awakening has begun. You see, silence is the language of the soul. It's where you finally meet yourself without all the roles: the parent, the worker, the helper, the one who's supposed to hold it all together. In silence, all that falls away, and what's left is you. Not the story of you, but the awareness behind it. And when you start to live from that awareness, conversations change. You no longer need to fill every pause. You can sit with someone and simply be. Sometimes the most honest moment between two people isn't in what's said, but in what's shared wordlessly. So let me ask you, when was the last time you allowed yourself to just sit in silence? Not to think, not to fix, not to distract, just to be. Try it tonight. Turn off the TV. Let the world quiet down and listen. Because underneath all that noise, you might discover that life has been speaking to you all along. You know, somewhere along the way, we were taught that love is a transaction. You give a little, you get a little. You make someone happy, they make you happy. It sounds fair, doesn't it? But the truth is, that kind of love always carries a quiet fear underneath. The fear of losing it. When I was younger, I used to think love was about finding the right person. Someone who would understand me, complete me, maybe even save me from myself. But as the years went by, and I sat with hundreds of people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, I began to notice something profound. The people who had truly awakened, they didn't need love in that old way anymore. They became it. See, when you start to wake up, you no longer look at people as objects of desire or disappointment. You see them as expressions of the same life that breathes through you. You recognize yourself in their eyes, even in their flaws, even in their pain. And suddenly, love stops being something you do. It becomes something you are. I once worked with a man who lost his wife after 40 years of marriage. He told me, "Alan, I still talk to her every morning, not because I can't let go, but because I know she's not gone." That's what awakened love looks like. It doesn't depend on proximity or approval or outcome. It's the recognition that consciousness never really separates. It just changes form. But here's the thing: when you start to love like that, many people won't understand. They'll say you've become distant, detached, maybe even cold. Because the world is used to love that clings. It's used to the kind of affection that says, "I'll love you if you make me feel good. I'll stay as long as you reflect the image I want to see." Yet real love doesn't play by those rules. It doesn't ask for anything. It sees the divine in everyone, even the ones who can't see it in themselves. And I'll be honest with you, it's not always easy. Sometimes it means watching someone you care about walk away and still blessing them in silence. Sometimes it means forgiving people who never apologized. Sometimes it means letting go, not out of indifference but out of understanding. So I want to ask you something. When was the last time you looked at someone, not for who they were to you, but for who they are in their own being? When was the last time you loved without needing anything in return? Because when you do, something shifts. You begin to see God in every pair of eyes, every smile, every goodbye. And that, my friend, is when love stops being a human emotion and becomes a sacred way of seeing. You know, people often think awakening is about gaining something, wisdom. Peace may be a higher state of mind. But what I've seen again and again is that real awakening begins not with gain, but with loss. A quiet, invisible kind of death. I call it the death of the psychological self, not the body, but the story we've spent a lifetime telling ourselves about who we are. For over 6 decades, I've watched people chase identities the way children chase butterflies. We build careers, families, reputations. We decorate the walls of our ego with titles and memories. And then one day, something happens. A divorce, a diagnosis, a death, a disappointment so deep it cracks the mask we've worn for years. That's when the death begins. The image of who you thought you were starts to crumble, and for a while it feels like everything's falling apart. But my friend, that's not destruction. That's truth breaking through the shell. I remember talking to a retired doctor, 71 years old. He told me, "Alan, I don't know who I am anymore. My career's over. My kids don't need me. The man I was doesn't exist." And I smiled gently and said, "Then maybe for the first time you're finally alive." Because when the ego dies, something magnificent takes its place. Not a new identity, but presence itself. A quiet awareness that watches without judgment, that simply is. It doesn't need to prove or defend or achieve. It just breathes. But this stage of awakening can be terrifying. The mind screams, "If I'm not this person, then who am I?" And the answer whispered by silence is, you are what's left when the story ends. Science even supports this. When people experience ego dissolution, whether through deep meditation, near-death experiences, or profound loss, brain scans show less activity in the default mode network, the part responsible for the narrative of me. In that quieting, peace arises. Because for the first time, you're no longer trapped inside your own reflection. Death, in this sense, is not the end of you. It's the end of everything you're not. It's the moment the wave remembers it's the ocean. So if life has ever stripped something from you, a title, a role, a person you thought you couldn't live without, don't rush to rebuild the old structure. Sit in the ruins for a while, because in that stillness, something new is born. Not someone, but being itself. And maybe that's what all the saints and sages were pointing to when they said, to die before you die, and realize there is no death at all. You know, time is a funny thing. We talk about it like it's real, something we can hold, measure, manage, even save. But the older I get, the more I see that time is just another story we tell ourselves. What truly exists is this moment. This breath, this heartbeat. When people start to awaken, one of the first illusions that begins to dissolve is the illusion of time. They realize that the past isn't something back there, it's just a memory appearing now. And the future, it's just imagination happening now. There has only ever been now. But we humans, we love our timelines. We say things like, someday when I retire, when the kids are grown, when I finally have time, I'll start living. Yet I've seen too many people reach that someday and realize life had been quietly passing them by while they were busy preparing for it. I remember talking to a man in his 60s who'd spent his whole life saving for the future. He said, "Alan, I finally have everything I wanted. The house, the money, the free time. But now I don't know what to do with it." And I looked at him and said softly, "Maybe it's time to stop preparing for life and start being alive." Because when you're fully present, something miraculous happens. The ordinary becomes sacred. A sip of coffee, a breeze through the window, the sound of rain. They stop being background noise. They become the music of existence itself. But the mind doesn't like this kind of simplicity. It always wants to be somewhere else, revising the past, rehearsing the future. That's why so many people live in constant tension. Their bodies are in the present, but their hearts are scattered across decades. When you awaken, that changes. You stop chasing tomorrow and start embracing today. You begin to understand that this moment is not a stepping stone, it's the destination. And once you see that the race ends, there's nowhere to get to because you've already arrived. Even modern neuroscience supports this. Studies on mindfulness show that when the brain is anchored in the present, the areas responsible for anxiety and rumination quiet down. It's as if the mind finally exhales. So let me ask you, my friend, how much of your life have you spent waiting for the right time, waiting to be ready, waiting to be healed, waiting to be happy? What if this right here, right now is the right time? What if life isn't waiting for you somewhere down the road, but whispering to you in this very breath? Stop chasing clocks. Stop living like the present is a means to an end. Because one day you'll realize that every moment you've ever loved, every memory you cherish, every heartbeat you've ever felt, they all happened in the same place. Here. One of the strangest things about waking up is realizing just how asleep most of our relationships have been. I don't mean asleep in a moral sense, not wrong, not bad, just unconscious. Built on habits, not awareness. On mutual hypnosis, not genuine connection. Most of us spend our lives agreeing to the same dream. We agree that Monday is terrible and Friday is freedom. We agree that success looks a certain way, that safety lives inside a bank account, that happiness can be bought someday, somehow. We nod together, complain together, celebrate the same illusions together. And in that agreement, we feel connected. But what happens when you stop agreeing? When you wake up, something begins to shift, quietly, almost imperceptibly. You start to see that the rules of the game were never real. You notice how much of life is performance. People saying what they're supposed to say, feeling what they're expected to feel. And suddenly the small talk that once filled the room feels like static. I remember a woman in her early 60s, a dear client of mine. She told me, "Alan, my friends think I've changed. They say I'm not fun anymore, but I just can't pretend like I used to." And I said, "You haven't lost your friends, my dear. You've simply stopped participating in the dream they're still living in. That's the thing. When you awaken, you no longer play along with the collective trance. You stop gossiping about people who aren't there. You stop complaining just to belong. You stop pretending you care about things that don't touch your soul. And yes, it costs you something. You lose a few invitations. Some people drift away. But what you gain is far greater, yourself. You start attracting different souls. Quieter ones, gentler ones who don't need to fill the silence. People who aren't interested in proving they're right, but in being real. And you realize that a single authentic connection is worth more than a lifetime of social comfort. Sometimes people ask me, "Alan, don't you miss the old crowd?" And I smile. Because you can love them deeply without wanting to fall back asleep with them. You see, compassion doesn't mean re-entering the illusion. It means standing awake, holding space for others to wake when they're ready. If you've ever felt like you no longer fit in with the people you once loved, please know that's not a failure. It's a sign of growth. You're not leaving them behind. You're simply stepping out of the dream. And maybe, just maybe, your silence, your clarity, your peace will one day become the very thing that calls them to awaken too. For most of my life, I thought life was something that happened to me. Good things, bad things, accidents, heartbreaks. I was the one in the middle of it all, trying to survive, trying to make sense of it. And when pain came, as it always does, my first instinct was to ask, why me? If you've ever whispered those two words, why me? Then I want to tell you something from the depth of my heart. I understand. I really do. Because when you lose someone you love, when your body begins to fail, when your plans collapse like sandcastles in the tide, it's natural to feel like a victim of life's cruelty. It's what the human mind does. It tries to find blame to build a story that makes the chaos bearable. But awakening changes everything. When consciousness starts to open, you begin to see that pain was never your enemy. It was your teacher, perhaps the only one you ever truly listened to. I remember a man named Robert. He came to see me years ago after losing his wife to cancer. He was 62, strong, intelligent, but broken in ways he couldn't explain. He sat across from me and said, "Alan, I feel like life has taken everything from me. I did everything right. I was faithful, kind, hardworking. And yet, this." We sat in silence for a while, long enough for the tears to dry on his face. Then I asked him softly, "When you think of her now, what do you feel?" He paused, then whispered, "Peace and love," I said. "Then life hasn't taken anything from you, Robert. It just took away what could never stay, so you could see what never leaves." He looked at me confused, but a few seconds later something shifted in his eyes. That subtle moment when understanding replaces despair. That's what awakening does. It doesn't erase pain. It transforms your relationship with it. For most of us, pain becomes our identity. We wear it like a badge. I'm the one who was betrayed. I'm the one who lost everything. It gives us a story, and stories make us feel real. But here's the truth. Pain isn't meant to be a home. It's meant to be a doorway. When you step through it, when you stop clinging to the narrative of what they did to me, what I lost, what went wrong, you begin to see the gift hidden inside the wound. Sometimes the gift is compassion. Sometimes it's strength. Sometimes it's silence. And sometimes it's a deeper capacity to love than you ever thought possible. You see, the mind loves control. It says, if I can understand why this happened, maybe I can prevent it next time. But the heart doesn't care about explanations. It just wants to heal. And healing doesn't come from logic. It comes from surrender. That's why the spiritually awake person no longer identifies as a victim. Not because they're naive or detached, but because they finally see that life was never against them. Even the darkest moments, the ones that broke them open, were part of the unfolding. The wound is the place where the light enters you. When the ego cracks, when the armor shatters, when the story collapses, that's when grace can finally reach you. I've met so many people in their later years who tell me, "Alan, I wish I'd known this sooner. I spent half my life angry at my parents, my ex, my job, even God. And I always smile gently and say, it's okay. Even anger is a form of prayer. It means you are still talking to life. What matters is not what happened to you, but what you do with it now. Will you keep drinking the poison of resentment, or will you let the pain become medicine to make you wiser, softer, freer?" Let me tell you a little secret, something I've seen in every awakened soul I've met. They've all suffered deeply. Not one of them escaped pain, but the difference is they stopped using pain to define them. They stopped saying, "I am the one who is hurt," and started saying, "I am the one who sees the hurt and is no longer bound by it." That shift from identification to observation, that's the resurrection after the death of the ego. It's when you realize you were never the character in the story. You were the awareness watching it all unfold. So let me ask you, what story have you been carrying? Which old wound still defines how you see yourself? Can you imagine just for a moment putting that story down, not denying it, just laying it gently on the ground and standing there without a label, without a past, without a grievance? Who would you be then? If you listen closely, the silence will answer. Because freedom isn't about fixing what happened. It's about seeing that nothing needs to be fixed, only understood, embraced, and released. You don't heal by changing the past. You heal by seeing that the past no longer has power over this moment, unless you keep breathing life into it. And this moment, this breath, is untouched, pure, eternal. That's where true forgiveness begins, not by saying it's okay, but by realizing there's nothing left to protect. You survived, you grew, and maybe that's exactly what the pain was trying to teach you all along. I once heard a woman say, "If I could go back, I'd change nothing, not even the pain." When I asked her why, she said, "Because it was my heartbreak that cracked me open enough to finally meet myself." That's it. That's awakening, when life stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that happens through you. So tonight, if you find yourself looking back on all the hurts, the betrayals, the losses, don't ask, "Why did this happen to me?" Ask, "What did this try to show me?" Because once you stop seeing yourself as a victim, you start seeing yourself as what you truly are. A soul learning how to love through every storm it's ever faced. And maybe that's what healing really means. Not escaping pain, but realizing pain was never separate from love. The moment you stop fighting your suffering, you begin to see that life was never punishing you. It was shaping you into awareness itself. I sometimes sit in a cafe, watch people around me, and realize just how loud our world has become. Not just the noise of traffic or phones or television, but the noise of opinions, of endless talking, scrolling, performing. Everyone wants to be seen, to be heard, to be right, but very few want to be still. When you reach a certain age, maybe in your 50s, 60s, or beyond, you begin to notice that the world moves faster than your heartbeat. And in that rush, something beautiful but quiet, something essential, is getting lost: the wisdom of silence. I've spent most of my life listening to people in their later years, men and women who've worked hard, raised families, lost loved ones, and come face to face with the fragility of it all. And what strikes me every time is this: they don't speak in theories anymore. They speak in pauses. There's a gentleness in them, a kind of soft knowing that doesn't need to win arguments or impress anyone. It's not the loud wisdom of books. It's the quiet wisdom of living. But here's the thing. In today's world, that kind of wisdom doesn't trend. We live in an age that worships youth, speed, and certainty. Social media rewards quick opinions, not long reflections. The loudest voice wins, not the deepest one. So when an older, calmer soul speaks with patience instead of passion, the world mistakes it for weakness. When they pause to listen before answering, people think they're slow. When they choose peace over argument, the crowd calls them indifferent. But what they don't understand is that this kind of quiet is not emptiness, it's fullness. It's the fullness of having seen enough to no longer need to react to everything. I remember a woman named Claire, a retired teacher. She told me, "Alan, I used to fight for every opinion. I thought being right gave me meaning, but now I just want peace." She said she would rather sit in her garden and watch the wind move through the trees than argue about politics or gossip about neighbors. And she smiled and said, "Maybe that's what growing old really means, not giving up, but finally knowing what's worth your energy." And she's right, because awakening isn't about becoming detached, it's about becoming discerning. It's knowing the difference between what matters and what's just noise. You see, the older you get, the more you realize that the loudest rooms are often the emptiest, and that wisdom doesn't shout, it whispers. It comes to you in moments when you're doing nothing important, folding laundry, tending a plant, making tea, listening to the rain. It comes when you stop trying to prove you're valuable and start remembering that you already are. But I also know, for many people in their later years, this world feels alien now. You try to share your experience, your lessons, your perspective, and people interrupt. They scroll while you speak. They nod politely, but you can see their minds elsewhere. And sometimes, that hurts. It makes you wonder if your voice still matters, if your stories still have a place in this fast, distracted world. If that's you, my friend, let me tell you something. Your wisdom matters now more than ever. Because while the world is obsessed with noise, it's starving for depth and the quiet wisdom that comes from living, failing, forgiving, and starting again. That's something no algorithm can replicate. You may not have 1,000,000 followers, but you carry something far rare: perspective. And perspective is the soul's compass. In my work, I've seen something extraordinary happen when younger people sit with elders who are awake, present, and gentle. They soften. Their breathing slows. Their hearts open. Because your stillness speaks a language their souls remember, even if their minds don't. That's why your calmness isn't irrelevance, it's medicine. In a world addicted to urgency, your patience is sacred. In a culture obsessed with certainty, your humility is healing. And in a society drowning in words, your silence is prayer. I once attended a gathering of spiritual teachers, many of them young, vibrant, passionate, eager to share their truth. And then there was an older man in the corner, quiet, smiling. He didn't say a word for nearly 2 hours. When someone finally asked him to speak, he just said, "Everything you've said is beautiful. Now let's just sit together and see what remains when the words are gone." The whole room fell silent. Some were uncomfortable, but a few of us felt something shift, like the air itself had become softer, thicker with presence. That's the power of quiet wisdom. It doesn't need to convince. It simply is. You see, true maturity isn't about age. It's about spaciousness. It's when your mind no longer reacts instantly to every stimulus. When you can hold opposing truths without needing one to win. When you can say, "I don't know," and feel no shame in it. That's the freedom that comes with awakening, the freedom from needing to be right. And maybe that's the greatest paradox of all. When you're young, you think wisdom will make you certain. But when you're wise, you realize wisdom makes you gentle. So if you've ever felt unseen in this noisy world, if you've felt your calm presence mistaken for apathy, your slowness for weakness, your silence for irrelevance, I want you to know you are not behind. You are ahead. You are what this world will one day remember it's missing. Because the deeper the noise gets, the more sacred the silence becomes. I often think of the ocean when I think of awakened elders. The surface is full of movement, waves rising, falling, colliding. But dive deep enough and it's utterly still. That stillness isn't the absence of life. It's the foundation of it, and that's what your wisdom is, the depth that holds the waves without trying to control them. So tonight, if you feel unseen in this fast, loud, restless world, sit with that feeling not as a victim but as a witness. Watch the noise around you and remember the world has always needed its quiet ones. The healers, the listeners, the soft voices that remind humanity to slow down. Your calm is not outdated. It's timeless. Your wisdom is not invisible. It's just too deep to shout. And one day, when the noise finally exhausts itself, people will come searching for what you've known all along, that the truth of life isn't found in the rush, but in the pause between breaths. Do not mistake my silence for emptiness. It took me a lifetime to find peace in the space where words end.